Everything you thought was stable in the car industry is already crumbling. Across America, once unstoppable truck brands are teetering on the edge. Executives deny it, dealerships downplay it, but the truth is brutal. Names trusted for generations are running out of road. So which brands are about to vanish? Why didn't anyone step in to stop it? And how much could it cost you if you buy into the wrong one? By the end of this video, you'll see it's not just trucks at risk. It's your money, your safety, and your future. Nissan. Back in the days when Japanese automakers were rewriting the playbook of global transportation, Nissan stood tall as one of the great names that ordinary Americans trusted with their livelihoods and long commutes. This was the brand that carried the badge of affordability, longevity, and performance for decades. It was the competitor that gave Toyota and Honda a true run for their money. Yet here we are, in the 21st century, watching this once mighty badge slip further into the quicksand of poor decisions, financial collapse, and engineering shortcuts that could eventually erase the name altogether. The descent of Nissan is not the story of one vehicle or even one failed experiment. It is the collective weight of years of compromises. From the early years, Nissan positioned itself as the brand for hard-working, practical drivers. Americans gravitated toward its compact trucks and efficient sedans because they balanced value and reliability with just enough style to feel aspirational. But the spark that once lit the company's engines slowly dimmed as the years rolled by. What was once considered affordable strength began turning into frustrating weakness, and customers who had been loyal for generations started drifting toward other brands. Financial turmoil hit like a thunderclap. In the late 2010s, the company reported profit losses that reached 99% compared with previous fiscal years. That kind of collapse was not just alarming, it was historic. The reputation of Nissan, a brand that had once embodied trust, suddenly stood on unstable ground. Executives scrambled with restructuring plans, layoffs, and half-hearted design refreshes. None of it managed to ignite the confidence that had been lost. The vehicles themselves told the harsher story. Nissan's widely promoted continuously variable transmission, once marketed as a forward-looking innovation, became one of the most despised drivetrain systems on the road. Owners across America reported slipping, shuddering, jerking, and eventual breakdowns often before reaching 100,000 miles. Repair costs ballooned into the thousands, with some owners facing bills between $3,500 and $8,000 just to keep their family car alive. Instead of reliability, drivers inherited a ticking time bomb disguised under sleek body panels. Truck lovers, who had once chosen Nissan's mid-size pickups for their toughness, found themselves holding the short end of the stick. Competitors like Toyota refined their Tacoma, while Nissan left the Frontier languishing in outdated interiors, sloppy steering, and ride quality that felt like punishment. By the time Nissan attempted refreshes, consumer trust had already been drained. The wider picture is even darker. From corporate scandals involving high-level executives to shrinking market share in North America, Nissan has become a textbook case in how to squander decades of credibility. Even in its home country of Japan, near bankruptcy hovered dangerously close. The brand that once symbolized progress now fights for survival with little left in its arsenal. So while Nissan trucks and sedans may be available today for what seems like bargain prices, the hidden costs in repairs and depreciation turn those deals into traps. The question is not whether Nissan has stumbled. The real question is whether the company will ever climb out of the hole it has dug. If Nissan's downfall feels like death by 1,000 cuts, the story that follows shows what happens when a brand builds its entire reputation on brute strength and then loses the fight to keep it alive. If you've ever owned one of these trucks or watched a brand you trusted start falling apart, hit that like button right now and drop your story in the comments. Your voice matters, and sharing it helps other drivers avoid the same expensive mistakes. Dodge. American roads have always had a love affair with muscle and grit, and for much of the 20th century, one brand embodied that identity more than most: Dodge. Known for raw power, bold styling, and an aggressive approach to marketing, Dodge was the kind of name that appealed directly to drivers who wanted to feel a surge of energy each time they pressed the accelerator. For years, its trucks and cars carried the swagger of American muscle into neighborhoods, highways, and work sites across the nation. But the modern era has proven less kind shine to this once glorious nameplate, as shifting markets, corporate missteps, and declining reliability have pushed Dodge toward the edge of irrelevance. The Dodge Dakota is one of the clearest examples of this brand's struggle. Introduced in the late 1980s, it was designed to bridge the gap between small compact trucks and the larger full-sized pickups. For a time, it worked brilliantly, giving American buyers a vehicle with versatility, power, and presence. The Dakota could haul, tow, and still look stylish while parked in the driveway. Yet as fuel prices rose in the early 2010s and consumer expectations evolved, Dodge failed to evolve with them. Gas-hungry engines and outdated designs transformed what was once a forward-thinking truck into a burden few buyers wanted to shoulder. Sales declined sharply, and by the end of the model's life cycle, the Dakota had been quietly erased from dealer showrooms. But Dodge's struggles go far beyond a single discontinued truck. The Ram lineup, once under the Dodge badge before being spun off under its own brand, was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it produced some of the most aggressive and desirable pickups in America. On the other hand, quality control issues, frequent recalls, and high repair costs damaged trust with loyal customers. Transmission failures, premature rust problems, and electrical gremlins became a recurring theme for owners. By the mid-2010s, resale values for certain Dodge trucks plummeted compared to competitors from Ford and Chevrolet. What was once an American powerhouse looked increasingly like a gamble. Financial pressures within the parent company only added fuel to the fire. Chrysler, which controlled Dodge, went through bankruptcy during the economic crisis of 2008 and 2009. This left Dodge struggling for resources, caught between the demands of survival and the need to innovate. Instead of setting trends, the brand became reactive, relying on nostalgia-driven marketing and muscle car bravado rather than genuine engineering advancements. Buyers who once viewed Dodge as a symbol of American toughness began to look elsewhere, leaving the brand clinging to a shrinking share of the marketplace. Today, Dodge trucks from earlier decades can be found on used lots for surprisingly low prices. While that might seem attractive, the hidden costs in repairs, fuel consumption, and depreciation often outweigh the initial bargain. The Dodge name still carries a certain roar, but beneath that sound lurks the reality of a brand struggling to stay alive. Where Dodge stumbled trying to balance muscle with reliability, the following brand took a bold design gamble that ended up collapsing under its own weight: Chevrolet. In the long saga of American pickup trucks, Chevrolet has often stood as one of the giants. The brand carries decades of heritage, from post-World War II farm trucks to the sleek suburban workhorses that filled driveways in the 1980s and 1990s. Chevrolet represented the reliable blue-collar choice, a brand that promised durability and accessibility at a fair price. For many families, owning a Chevrolet truck was not just transportation, but a rite of passage. Yet even legends stumble, and Chevrolet has endured a series of miscalculations that pushed certain pickups toward obscurity. Now, some of those once celebrated models can be found for shockingly low prices, a reminder of how even the strongest brands can falter. Among Chevrolet's boldest experiments was the Avalanche, a hybrid of sport utility vehicle and pickup truck introduced in the early 2001. At first glance, it appeared revolutionary. The signature midgate allowed drivers to extend the bed into the cabin, turning a short pickup into a longer hauler. Families loved the idea of blending suburban comfort with rugged utility, but the concept proved to be more novelty than necessity. Owners often found the Avalanche too bulky for city life, while serious truck buyers viewed it as too soft for heavy work. The design tried to be everything at once, and, in doing so, failed to excel at any one role. By the mid-2010s, Avalanche sales had collapsed. Critics noted dated interiors, poor fuel economy, and clumsy handling. Depreciation rates accelerated, leaving owners frustrated as resale values fell faster than comparable Ford or Dodge competitors. Today, used Avalanches can be purchased for nearly nothing compared to their original sticker prices, a once premium vehicle reduced to bargain bin status. The troubles for Chevrolet extended beyond that single experiment. Even stalwart full-size trucks like the Silverado suffered from waves of criticism. Recurring transmission issues, premature rust, and electrical malfunctions left some buyers questioning whether Chevrolet could still claim the mantle of dependability. While the Silverado continues to sell in large numbers, those reputation dents have left an undeniable scar. Corporate struggles compounded the issue. General Motors, Chevrolet's parent company, faced bankruptcy during the financial crisis of 2008 and 2009. In the years that followed, Chevrolet trucks became symbols of both resilience and fragility. The marketing leaned heavily on patriotic imagery and nostalgia, yet real-world performance did not always live up to those ideals. Loyal buyers remained, but younger generations often turned toward competitors, offering fresher designs and superior reliability. The consequence is visible in today's used market. Many older Chevrolet trucks sit unsold for months, their prices dropping lower each season. For buyers willing to gamble on repairs, these vehicles can seem like steals, but beneath the tempting price tags lie the risks of mounting maintenance costs and questionable long-term durability. Chevrolet once symbolized the heart of American trucking, but certain missteps have pushed the brand to the brink of losing that title. Chevrolet's miscalculated experiment proves that even giants can slip, while the truck that comes after demonstrates how oversized ambition can turn into oversized disaster. Hummer. Few names in the world of trucks carry as much brute force imagery as Hummer. Born from military heritage, the Hummer line stormed into civilian life during the 1990s, with an identity built entirely on size, presence, and sheer intimidation. Drivers who wanted to make a statement, who wanted their vehicle to say something louder than words, turned to Hummer. It was not simply transportation, it was a declaration. Yet declarations do not always translate into sustainable business, and over time the Hummer brand revealed itself to be more of a cultural icon than a practical pickup. The Hummer H2 and later the H3T promised to carry battlefield toughness into American suburbs and job sites. For a short while, the vehicles succeeded in capturing attention. Hollywood stars bought them, athletes paraded them, and ordinary consumers stretched their budgets to get behind the wheel of what felt like rolling fortresses. But the shine wore off faster than expected. Fuel economy was disastrous, often sinking below 10 miles per gallon in city driving. As gas prices soared in the mid-2008s, buyers quickly realized that owning a Hummer meant draining wallets at the pump with alarming speed. The H3T pickup, in particular, seemed like a gamble that never paid off. General Motors attempted to blend the recognizable Hummer look with pickup utility, but what resulted was a vehicle too heavy for efficiency and too compromised for true truck duties. Payload ratings lagged behind competitors, while off-road performance, though decent, could not mask poor handling on highways. Consumer reviews often highlighted stiff rides, cramped interiors, and maintenance headaches that surfaced earlier than expected. Sales figures began to collapse. In the early 2010s, as the economic recession deepened, Hummer showrooms grew quiet. The very qualities that had made the trucks popular, oversized bodies, aggressive styling, unapologetic fuel consumption, turned into liabilities. By 2010, General Motors had announced the complete discontinuation of the Hummer line, closing the book on one of the most polarizing automotive experiments of modern times. Today, used Hummer trucks can be found for surprisingly little money compared to their original sky-high prices at auctions and on dealer lots. Vehicles that once demanded luxury-level premiums now sit at fractions of their initial value. For adventurous buyers, the temptation is obvious: a chance to own a vehicle that once symbolized dominance for pennies on the dollar. Yet the hidden costs remain unavoidable. Repairs are notoriously expensive, replacement parts are scarce, and constant fuel expenses make even short commutes costly. What seems cheap at first glance often turns into a financial pit. Still, the Hummer name has refused to vanish completely. General Motors recently attempted a revival with electric versions under the GMC umbrella, but that is less a continuation of the old Hummer and more a reinvention. The original brand as Americans once knew it, loud, oversized, gas-thirsty, has effectively gone extinct. Hummer showed us that bigger is not always better. Meanwhile, the brand ahead on this list reveals how abandoning loyal fans can be just as destructive. Ford. Across the long highways of America, one brand has stood as both legend and workhorse: Ford. From the days when Henry Ford transformed manufacturing with the moving assembly line to the decades when the F-Series dominated sales charts, Ford became synonymous with the American truck. Millions of families trusted the badge, and for many drivers, the first set of keys handed down by a father or grandfather belonged to a Ford pickup. That emotional connection gave Ford enormous strength, yet it also created expectations that the company sometimes failed to meet. Among those failures, one particular chapter stands out as a reminder that even giants can stumble. The Ford Ranger of the late 2000 and early 2010 was once the symbol of compact practicality. Small, efficient, and dependable, it held a beloved spot in the American lineup for decades. Introduced in the early 1980s, the Ranger offered a no-nonsense truck at a price everyday workers could afford. Throughout the 1990s, it was a sales powerhouse, providing young drivers and seasoned tradesmen alike with a tool that was tough enough without being oversized. But by the time the new millennium advanced, Ford allowed the Ranger to wither on the vine. While competitors refreshed their compact trucks, Ford largely ignored the Ranger. The design aged badly, safety features lagged behind, and consumer demand shifted toward more refined alternatives. By 2011, Ford quietly pulled the Ranger from the North American market, leaving countless loyalists bewildered. For many buyers, it felt like betrayal. The company that had built its reputation on serving working-class America had abandoned the very segment that made it strong. Toyota swooped in with the Tacoma, Chevrolet re-entered with mid-size models, and Ford surrendered ground it, once owned outright. Used Rangers from those final years soon flooded second-hand lots. With Ford no longer producing compact pickups, resale values collapsed. Dealers slashed prices just to move inventory, and trucks that once carried proud reputations were sold for fractions of their earlier worth. Today, spotting those early 2010s Rangers on a used lot can feel like stumbling upon forgotten relics. Vehicles available for nearly nothing compared with their original sticker prices. Yet while the bargains might appear attractive, many of those trucks require costly upkeep due to outdated systems and high mileage. Beyond the Ranger, Ford's broader struggles revealed themselves during the same period. The company weathered the economic crisis of 2008 better than some rivals, avoiding bankruptcy, but not without cuts and compromises. Customers saw uneven quality control across models, recalls over safety defects, and a gradual erosion of confidence. While the flagship F-150 continued to dominate sales, the disappearance of the Ranger left a hole in the lineup that Ford would not repair until years later with an all-new design. Ford remains a titan, but the lesson of the Ranger stands clear. Ignore loyal customers, and you risk losing them forever. Ford's misstep left a loyal audience stranded, but the next name in our countdown struggled for a very different reason, failing to even define why it should exist at all. General Motors Company. For more than a century, the name General Motors Company has carried weight across America's highways. The company created a lineup of divisions that stretched from entry-level work vehicles to luxury sedans, and among those divisions stood General Motors Company Truck and Coach, more commonly known to consumers as General Motors Company. For decades, General Motors Company positioned itself as the slightly more refined twin of Chevrolet, offering nearly identical trucks with minor styling differences and marginally upgraded trim. Yet that strategy, which once seemed clever, eventually exposed a problem that haunts the brand today: lack of identity. The earliest General Motors Company pickups gained popularity in the mid-20th century by presenting themselves as professional-grade alternatives to Chevrolet. Farmers, contractors, and tradesmen felt a sense of pride in choosing the badge that whispered refinement. But as years passed, the similarities between Chevrolet and General Motors Company became impossible to ignore. Panels, engines, and drivetrains often matched exactly, leaving consumers to wonder why one should pay extra for what amounted to the same truck with a different grille. The Canyon, introduced in the early 2004s, illustrates this challenge clearly. On paper, it was supposed to be a unique midsize truck that combined comfort and utility. In reality, it was the Chevrolet Colorado with slightly altered body lines and a badge swap. Customers caught on quickly, sales lagged, and by the late 2000s, the Canyon was considered one of the least inspiring pickups on the market. Its interiors felt dated, performance lagged behind Toyota and Nissan competitors, and reliability issues plagued owners with electrical malfunctions and transmission concerns. General Motors Company's reliance on badge engineering eroded its credibility. While Chevrolet maintained broad appeal as the affordable, mainstream option, General Motors Company struggled to justify its existence. Dealerships often found themselves explaining why customers should spend more money for a truck nearly identical to one sitting across the lot under the Chevrolet banner. As word spread, resale values dipped. Early General Motors Company Canyons lost half their worth within just a few years, and used models today can be bought for astonishingly low prices compared to their original cost. Beyond trucks, General Motors Company faced branding confusion across its entire lineup. The Yukon Yukon overlapped with the Chevrolet Tahoe, the Sierra mirrored the Silverado, and the Acadia blurred lines with the Traverse. Consumers questioned the logic, and the brand's market share shrank. While General Motors Company advertised itself as professional grade, critics argued that little separated it from Chevrolet, besides chrome accents and marketing slogans. The 2008 financial crisis further weakened the brand. General Motors Corporation, the parent company, filed for bankruptcy in 2009, and questions swirled about which divisions would survive restructuring. Pontiac, Saturn, and Hummer were cut entirely. General Motors Company remained, but its survival felt more like an afterthought than a vote of confidence. Today, used General Motors Company trucks remain among the most undervalued in the market. Buyers may see bargains, but they also see a brand that never truly defined its place. General Motors Company has long been haunted by its identity crisis, yet the final entry proves that even when a brand is overflowing with raw muscle, it can still collapse under the weight of its own flaws. You've seen how fast legendary truck brands can fade into history, but the truth is, more names are already on the edge. If you don't want to miss which ones go next, hit subscribe right now. Stay ahead, stay prepared, and never get blindsided again, because the final collapse might come sooner than anyone expects. Ram. Power, toughness, and unfiltered American attitude. Few truck brands have leaned harder on those qualities than Ram. For decades, Dodge Ram pickups were marketed as the ultimate combination of strength and style. Machines built to haul heavy loads while looking aggressive on Main Street. The growling engines, bold grills, and muscular stance made Ram a favorite among drivers who wanted more than just utility. They wanted a truck that reflected identity. But over the years, that identity has been undermined by cracks in quality, corporate reshuffling, and growing doubts about long-term dependability. What was once the pride of American driveways has, in too many cases, become a financial burden owners regret. The Ram 1500, especially during the mid-2000s, offers a telling picture. On the surface, the trucks looked competitive, offering V8 power, roomy interiors, and affordable price tags compared with rivals. Buyers signed up in droves, believing they were getting a reliable counterpart to Ford and Chevrolet. Yet beneath the aggressive marketing, engineering shortcuts lurked. Transmission problems appeared early in ownership cycles, leading to slipping gears, sudden failures, and repair bills that often stretched past $4,000. Rust became another notorious issue, with frames and body panels deteriorating far sooner than expected. Owners who purchased their trucks in good faith found themselves paying again and again just to keep basic functions alive. When Dodge reorganized under Chrysler and eventually split Ram into its own brand in 2010, executives hoped the move would refresh the image. For a short while, sales climbed. Shoppers were intrigued by bold advertisements portraying Rams as unstoppable American muscle, but reputation cannot be rebuilt overnight. Owners shared stories of electrical faults, premature suspension wear, and interiors that aged poorly. By the mid-2010s, resale values for certain Ram models lagged significantly behind competitors. Trucks that once cost over $30,000 new could be found a few years later at prices that seemed almost unbelievable. Bargains, yes, but bargains hiding expensive truths. The financial background only worsened the story. Chrysler, the parent company, faced bankruptcy during the economic collapse of 2008 and 2009. Government bailouts, foreign ownership transitions, and corporate restructuring drained resources and disrupted engineering priorities. While Ram attempted to push forward with flashy redesigns and heavy-duty marketing, many trucks rolling off the line still suffered from the same old reliability complaints. Today, used Ram trucks, especially those built in the mid-2000s, often sell for nearly nothing compared with their original sticker prices. At auctions and small-town lots, it is possible to pick up one for a fraction of what an equivalent Ford F-150 or Chevrolet Silverado might demand. But the truth remains, low upfront cost frequently translates into high long-term pain. Repairs pile up, resale value plummets further, and ownership becomes more burden than pride. Ram trucks still thunder with raw American muscle, but beneath the roar lies fragility. And that is the greatest irony. The brand that sells unstoppable toughness now fights desperately just to survive. You've just seen 7 truck brands that once defined American roads, now standing on the edge of extinction. Some may tempt you with bargain prices, but behind the shine are costly mistakes waiting to happen. Don't let history repeat itself in your driveway. Smash that like button if this opened your eyes, and share your story in the comments so others know the truth. Most importantly, hit subscribe right now, because more brands are collapsing, and the next video will expose names you never thought would fail. Stay ahead, stay informed, and protect yourself from the fall.